Oh, Mr. E. Finn, already in the house. Nice to see you here. As you notice, I'm tethered. I can't really move much because I'm tethered to my uh, headset or my earbuds today because my other microphone is still in the mail. It's not here yet. So I'm waiting for that to show up. But in the meantime, we can still chat some critters. We can talk about projects that are coming up and things like that, do some Q&A. So happy to have all of you here. Jordan Savala, always great to have you in the live stream. Thanks for jumping right on top of it. And Pet Paradise, Roger's Aquarium, Rogister Nudgel, hello. From Germany, nice. Horrific Dude, hello. Greetings all. Oh, we're already getting some likes. Nice. Supreme Gecko, Wally's in the house. Good evening. And Grant, hey, welcome. Good. Looks like people are showing up. It's always great to see. Some of you, well, let's see. I guess not very many of you. A few of you know that based on what I posted on Patreon a few days ago, is that my Armadillium gastroy or jastroy, however you pronounce it, have released some monkai. So I'm really excited about that. Heather Jensen, hello. Nice to see you here as well. It had been a while because I got these, I got the Armadillium gastroy when they were tiny, I mean, really tiny. And so it took them a while to reproduce. I got them back in October, but they were minuscule at the time. And so now they're finally starting to reproduce. And Heather, we looked into a wireless lavalier mic so you don't have cord issues. Have thought about it. I've used wireless lavalier mics in other applications. And so I have thought about it. I might do that. I'll just have to look into how I can get that hooked up to my iPad, I guess. I have used a wireless mic that did not have very good quality, and so I don't know about that, but I'll look into it a little bit more because I think that would be really nice. It's a good suggestion, so I'll check it out. And I'm probably actually not going to get up much because I am tethered. I'm just like 2 feet away from my iPad, and I can't really move very easily today because I don't have my, I don't have my normal cord that allows me to travel around the room. So I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of that today. Maybe I'll do a little bit near the end, but for now, probably not a lot. And Crystal's Pets and Plants in the house. Zero Cool. Nice. Nice to see you all here. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, well, right here, you can sort of see one of the snakes. I just barely fed them. They're getting really big. So that's kind of exciting. So Heather is saying, I looked into them too, and some of them have the transmitter plug as the same plug-in as a headphone jack. Oh, okay. Well, I will definitely look into it. I think that would be a worthwhile purchase if it prevents me from having to deal with cords, because honestly, I'm not all excited about working with cords, and I sometimes trip over them or kick them or whatever, and that can lead to damage as well as just frustration. So that sounds pretty good. If it's in a price range that I can handle, hey, I'm there. And of course, you all being here today helps with that because everyone who watches the videos helps. Of course, Patreon helps a lot. The Amazon affiliate links help a lot. All of those things help make that kind of thing possible. So I will definitely check that out. I think that would be a way to go if I can make it work. Very cool. Thank you for the suggestion, Heather. I want to try that. And let me see about the Scolopendra polymorpha, if it's out. You know what? It got out the other day, and it wasn't looking too hot. And we've had it for, I think, 4 years now. It wasn't looking good at all. Wasn't interested in eating. And I have my suspicions that it has passed on now. So I'm going to have to dig in there and check for sure. But sometimes they just, they come out of brumation after a long time and they're not doing as well. It could be a pretty old centipede because, like I said, we've had it for 4 years. It was full grown and produced a batch of eggs not too long after we got it. And so It was probably, a couple years old when we got it, and so it looks like it may be passing on from old age. It may have passed on from old age, which is sad. I would like to get some more Scolopendra polymorpha. I really like that species, so we'll see. But that appears to be what may be going on, and I'll have to confirm that. Oh, okay, Heather, $60. I might be able to make that work once my, I get my next payment in from my various YouTube connected revenue streams. I might be able to make that work. I hope so. That is awesome. I would love to have that link. And let's see, Pokesaurus, hello, welcome. Thoreau Pods, hello. And Crystal's Pets and Plants. Would you recommend air pump for sea monkeys? I have kept sea monkeys, quite a bit in fact. It's been a few years, but I've kept them. And I would only recommend an air pump if you do coarse bubbles, just like for Daphnia, and that you have a tank that's large enough to do that in. If you do, then yes. If it's just a small tank, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But I have kept them both with and without. If you have a tank that's about a gallon or larger, then I would say yes, do it. But if not, then I wouldn't. And Wally, how are the multis doing? They're doing pretty well. There are, I don't know, there's probably about 40-something fish in there. There are several fairly new babies in there. I would say probably more than half of the fish in there now are young, not tiny fry, but are less than half grown. Or, some of them might be approaching half grown. And so there are a lot of fish, and they're doing well. I've been feeding them a lot of baby brine shrimp, hatching those out. Actually, I've been teaching my son to hatch them out, delegating different jobs so that he can get paid for, working on this kind of stuff, and I don't have to worry about hatching that brine shrimp. So I haven't harvested them today. I need to check on it. But just got a new batch of eggs, so the hatch rate's great, and I've been feeding them a lot of those, a lot of microworms, a lot of fish food, and they're producing babies and growing. So pretty excited about that, doing well. I've been thinking of redoing the tank. I think it would be fun to put some Vallisneria in there or something. I don't know, we'll see. I'm also thinking about putting them in a 20 long instead of 29 high so I can move some things around, but we'll see. Anyway, they're doing well. Thanks for asking. And Mr. Efin, congratulations on your feathertail centipede. That's awesome. Hope it does well for you. Let's see, would you like a samurai snake plant for the arid beetle tank? It looks like a bird's nest, but more structural, angular. Ooh, that sounds cool. And is it short enough that I could fit it in there with the 8-inch height? If so, totally. That sounds awesome. As long as I can fit it in there and give it a good home. What is it about the chat today? The button is weird today. Oh, it's because it's in my shirt, so I can't see it. That sounds really cool, Heather. I don't think I've seen any of those cultivars. And coal shrum. Have you bred your own waxworms? I haven't. I've thought about doing it years and years and years ago. Like, how many years ago was that? 18 years ago. I tried at the time with the limited information that I had, that I read in like Reptiles and Amphibians magazine, something like that, and it was not successful. But like I said, limited information that I had at the time, and I think I used the wrong kind of glycerin. And there are a couple of different kinds of glycerin, and one's bad for waxworms and one's what people use to culture them in. And I used the wrong kind, I think, and I think that killed them. So, Shane Carter. Well, sorry, Cole. Just to follow up on that, I'm interested in doing it again at some point, but I haven't picked that up. I do keep waxworms on hand a lot because I feed them to our leopard gecko. I fed them to our scorpion before. Most our cresties. Some of our cresties eat them too, and so some of my jumping spiders will take them sometimes as well. So Shane Carter, have you ever had a nematode, Nemertian predatory worm problem in a vivarium before? If so, how did you deal with it? I have not. I have tried to avoid such things by very carefully, very carefully treating plants, pre-treating plants and other items that go into my vivarium. If it's something not living, like wood decor that can handle heat, I heat treat it in the oven, 200 degrees, half an hour or more. If it is something that can't handle that kind of treatment, like a live plant, then I will do the plant processing procedure of one kind or another. Sometimes I do the chlorine bleach method, where you dissolve bleach in a quantity of water and then immerse the plant for about 2 minutes in that after soaking the plant for an hour in normal water, then put it in the diluted bleach solution for 2 or 3 minutes, rinse it thoroughly. That tends to wipe things like that out. And if I can't do that, I will often do the, at least the long time immersion treatment, which takes care of some things, or I'll use CO2. I'll get a little piece of dry ice and put it in a deli cup and put that in a container that will hold the CO2 in. Put the plants in there and let them sit there for several hours or overnight. And that kills off just about anything like nematodes, nemertians, predatory worms, whatever. It doesn't kill plants. So that's how I take care of it. So I haven't really had problems like that. And I think that's why, because I try to be really careful with that kind of thing. So Pet Paradise, are you doing anything for World Turtle Day? I wish I were. I didn't realize it was World Turtle Day. I missed that somehow. Things have been a little crazy. So yeah, I haven't done anything like that. But I wish I had something to do. What could I do? Do I have any shirts with turtles on them? No. I used to have turtles back in the day, a long, long time ago, and I love turtles. So I should be doing something for it. I'll just say Happy World Turtle Day, everyone. That's something. Okay, Heather, that sounds awesome. It sounds really cool. I'm imagining this really cool plant. I bet it'll be even cooler than I'm imagining when I see it. Daniel the Big D, welcome. And Thoreau Pods, a few months we'll be getting some P. laevis milkback, orange and caramel. I'm loving the milkbacks, I gotta tell you. They're reproducing. I have several batches of monkey of different sizes. The largest ones are probably about, not quite a quarter of an inch yet. They're not quite that big, but they're pretty big. And let's see. They're just so much like, so much like the dairy cows, but with a cool different pattern. But in behavior and so on, they seem to be a lot like the dairy cows. So I'm really liking them. I like the orange too. They have this sort of creamy orange. I haven't had the caramels yet, but those look pretty cool. So congratulations on those. And Mr. E. Finn, you held your feathered tail centipede. I was not bitten. I'm glad you were not bitten. With some centipedes, it just seems like it's kind of the luck of the draw. They bite you sometimes and sometimes they don't. And Daniel, I'm going to go at least a half an hour, not from now, but from when I started. I might go longer. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, Mr. Efin, I hope you are not bitten. Oh, that is awesome, Pocosaurus. Glad to hear those babies all made it. Omo Ascend, do you have any fishing stories? Like of actually going fishing? I've done that a few times, and mostly when I was a kid, I went a few times. I caught a rock cod when I was about 8, and it fell off my pole. It was just a poplar stick with a line attached to it, and a bobber and stuff. My grandpa had helped me put it together, and I caught that on the ocean near the Puget Sound in Washington State, and caught this big old rock cod, but then it fell off the line, and that's about the only fishing story I have from actual fishing. So not much of a story, I guess. Horrific dude. How long did it take for mealworm beetles to lay eggs and then for those to hatch? I currently have a large population of new beetles, but I haven't seen any new mealworms. Well, it doesn't take long for them to lay eggs at all. They'll probably be laying eggs within a week or so of metamorphosing. As soon as they dry out and they're completely sclerotized, they start mating. So it's not going to take them long at all to lay eggs. But I would say that I'm not sure of the exact time, so I don't want to tell you a time that is totally wrong. But it's not uncommon to not notice the mealworms for a while because they are so minuscule for a while. So it takes a little while for them to get to a size where you'll actually see them. But I would say one thing you can do is take some of the substrate and put it on a piece of paper inside a bin or something, get a magnifying glass, kind of push it around so it's sort of flat and get a magnifying glass and just watch it. Don't hold it so that you're not moving it, and just put that magnifying glass over there in good light, and you may well see the substrate start to wiggle around. You'll start seeing tiny, tiny little worms. So I wouldn't be surprised if you were to try that and you would see some. So, And thank you, Chevy Fish. I'm going to show everybody my shirt again. This is Porcellio expensis. This was made by Jabberwork, and you can still get these from his Etsy shop. So, pretty cool shirt. I like it a lot. Thank you. And let's see. So Grant, I think I missed part of your message. So can you repeat that, and I'll do my best to answer it, because some of it seems to have gotten lost. So Jack, Storm Rage. So we follow your millipede substrate tutorial in the breeding millipedes video you made, but I saw that on arachnoboards. You posted about upgrading your substrate. What did you change about it? Okay. I'm trying to remember what was in the millipede substrate tutorial in that video, because I am constantly updating my substrate a little bit. And basically, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now, and maybe that'll help, because you probably have in your mind the substrate in my other video. So right now I'm doing 1 part organic compost if I can get it, and organic potting soil if I can't get it. I think right now the mix I have is organic potting soil, because I can't get the compost as easily, or couldn't get it when I bought this batch. And then I'm using the soaked oak pellets. I often use alder pellets, but I was able to source some oak pellets. I can't always do that, but that's what I'm using right now, because oak is, in the beetle community especially, is considered the superior wood for that sort of thing. So I'm using soaked oak pellets right now, and then 1/3 fallen hardwood leaves from my backyard, and then the calcium. So it's not a lot different, but it is a little bit different. And let's see. Hopefully that helps, Jack. Supreme Gecko, your latest video on mosquito bites was outstanding. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm glad you appreciated it. Ooh, sorry, just wiggled my cord. See, there we are with the cord thing again. Glad you appreciated it. It has been an interesting experience dealing with fungus nets over the years, and I love sharing what I'm finding that really works. So excited to, oh, I can see a snake behind me kicking around with a full belly. So I'm glad that you liked it. And Geocarcinus, that's the name of a crab, isn't it? Like a genus name of a crab species. That's what I'm thinking. The rubber duckies are doing okay. I got some younger babies, not from my own, but from someone else too. So I was putting my 2 colonies, the remnants of my original colony, with a few more babies together. They seem to be doing okay. I checked on them the other day. So we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping that I can get some babies eventually, but most of them are too young at this point. So Curtis Brown, hello and welcome. How's the blue death feigning beetle larvae coming along? They're actually doing okay. The other day when I checked on the ones that were not in the incubator yet, one of them had gotten so big in between times of checking on them that it had passed away, because they tend to do that if you don't get them in the incubator when they're ready to pupate. So I lost one, which really frustrated me, because I've been trying not to do that. But things got kind of busy, so I didn't check on it. Not that it died because it wasn't getting care. I was still caring for it, but I don't like to dig them up too often, understandably. And so I hadn't dug it up for a few weeks, and I missed the window, apparently. And it was big, but it had passed away. And then another one was of a good size to put in the incubator. So now I only have 1 out of the incubator. And I've got several in the incubator. I think I mentioned on another stream that one of them crawled out inside the incubator, somehow got out of its enclosure inside the incubator, and fell to the bottom and died. So that's crummy. But I've still got several live ones in there. I checked recently to see if there were any babies in, not babies, any emerged beetles. There were not. But on a related note, I am setting up their breeding colony again. I replaced a portion of the substrate in the breeding enclosure. I'm looking at it over here. That doesn't help you very much, sorry. Replaced a lot of the substrate. I put some fresh leaf litter crushed up in there, and some composted oak pellets and so on, to get, along with sand and cocoa fiber, to get a good substrate to do larvae. And I put my adults in there today, in fact, just a couple of hours ago, put the adults in there. And I'm going to try to get a lot of larvae this year. I think I've kind of nailed down a little bit the husbandry a little better to be able to get more larvae this year. And I'm just going to try to hatch as many as I can, and hopefully get even more this year than we did last year. I probably harvested, I don't know, I think I ended up only taking 8 larvae out of the enclosure. I was hoping to get some, to get to larger sizes in with the adults, but they didn't. So I'm just going to take out any larvae I find and put them in their own enclosures, And so see if I can get more larvae, basically. That's what I want to do. Heather Jensen, anyone know how to make a Pac-Man tank bioactive? It eats everything to the point that you can't keep it stocked. Ah, good question. You know, I've thought about that because I've thought about getting a Pac-Man frog, and I was just thinking, use springtails and some tiny isopods that won't be interesting to it. Tiny but prolific isopods. Something like Atlantosha floridana, because they are so tiny and so fast. I can't imagine that a Pac-Man frog would eat a whole lot of them, unless, you know, the Pac-Man frog's really tiny. But if you have a big old Pac-Man frog, I can't imagine it being interested in eating those. I could be wrong, but that is my idea. If anybody has any experience with the proper isopods for Pac-Man frogs, let me know your experiences, because like I say, I'm only speaking from speculation at this point. I'm always careful to mention that when that's what I'm doing. And Daniel the Big D, how's your budgies doing? What's the state you live in? How much does the climate affect your pets? I'm just curious. Budgie's doing great. I was working today, working from home, you know, on my computer, and he was sitting on my shoulder, as he often does, and was just chatting away, and I managed to get a sound bite from him. He loves to string words together, and he said something like, his name's Twilly, and he said something like Twilly Budgie Boy Budgie or something like that, all strung together, and I managed to catch it on the recording because he didn't know what I was doing, because it was just, I just turned the microphone on while he was doing it. So he didn't get nervous. He often gets nervous when I point a camera at him for whatever reason. Maybe the reflection from the lens bothers him or something. But anyway, he's doing really well. I live in the state of Utah, and it's quite dry here. It's the second driest state, at least that's what I've heard, second driest state after Nevada in the U.S. And the climate does affect the pets. I have to be careful with humidity. If anything needs a lot of humidity, I have to be careful to make sure they get enough. And that often means changing ventilation or things like that. Maybe reducing it compared to other, other situations. What else? It gets really, really cold here in the winter, well below freezing temperatures. So I know there are places where it gets colder, obviously, but actually one of the coldest places in the continental United States is here in this state, in the mountains. There's a spot, but anyway, it gets really cold here, and it gets pretty hot in the summer. It goes well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer fairly frequently. And in the summer, we use a swamp cooler, which you can't use in very humid places. So those of you who live in humid states probably don't even know what one is, or have never seen one at least. And it uses evaporation to cool the house off. So in the summer, it's a little more humid because the humidity from the swamp cooler gets added to the house, and it actually does fairly well, and that reduces our daytime temperatures. We try to keep them around 78 degrees, and that instead of 98 or whatever, and that seems to work pretty well. And then in the summer, of course, we just use central heating, and that works okay, but it really dries things out, so I have to make sure that the humidity is kept up. And I'm glad the centipede didn't get you, Mr. Efin. That's awesome. And Pet Paradise, thank you. The 23rd. I'm going to do anything when it happens in a few days. I ought to do something. I'm going to talk to my family about it. I think we should celebrate turtles somehow. Okay. So, Beetle King. All right. The only part that I saw was something that said based on activity, habits, care. I didn't see the first part of the question, so I would love to answer it, but I'm just missing the other half of it. It just says based on activity, habits, care. So just, I'm totally happy to answer this question. It just didn't come through. I should have been more clear about that, what part was working. Coming back, and it's no worries. Oh, okay, got it. So Grant, yes. So just fill me in on that question, we'll get it going. And so Geocarcinus is the genus of the Halloween crab. Okay, cool, I guess I was right. It was a crab genus. Cool. So you're, seriously, Heather, your toad goes after the springtails? That is surprising. That's pretty cool. It's probably not very helpful in this particular situation, but kind of, that's funny. I don't know. I would be interested to see if Pac-Man frog specifically would. If so, I'd go for a really fossorial small isopod like the Venecio parvus, or maybe Solisticus convexus is pretty fossorial, and they're practically bulletproof. They might be big enough to attract the attention of a Pac-Man frog, though. I don't know. Huh. Good one. Good question. Omua sand. Do you know how to find wild roly-polies or isopods? Yes, yes. I've done it quite a lot. Typically find a piece of rotting wood that is flat on the ground in a moist area is a great way. Flat rocks work too. Deep leaf litter, anything that has some moisture in it is a good place to look. You can flip that, make sure to put it back where you found it, and be careful when you're flipping it not to hurt yourself, of course. But yeah, that's a really good way to find them. You can also look after rains or in the morning, but when the dew is still out, a lot of times the humidity is higher, and so they'll just be crawling around, especially in the early morning. So those are good times to find them as well. And even in my area where it's pretty dry, there are Armadillidium vulgare is all over the place. And the other species I find right around here, I have found, not for a while, is Silisticus convexus. And I've found other wild Porcelia scaber and other species in different places as well. So pet paradise. Keep pea scaber with my Pac-Man frog, and they do just fine. I had lots of hiding spots for the isopods, and they should be okay. So good information, pet paradise. Apparently pea scaber is working for you. So Jordan Safala, what are your thoughts on maybe using a small container to start off an isopod culture versus the plastic shoebox bins? Depending on the number of isopods you have and how prolific they are, I often do that. It's a great thing to do. If you start out with, say, a 16-quart deli cup, properly ventilated, if you start with a dozen, that's great. And so, you know, it's about this big and around. That's not very big, but it totally works in my cases. In my situations, I've done that before when you just have a small number of isopods, you want to get them started. So what I usually do, if I have 10 to 12, I have them in there, keep them in there for a couple months with about an inch of substrate. And then as soon as I see babies and the babies have started to grow and I see some obvious growth on the babies, so they're not really tiny because I don't really like to move them when they're really tiny, that's what I do. That's what I tend to, I'll switch them over into a bin at that point, because then you probably have at least double the number, and that works out. So hopefully that helps, Jordan. Curtis, that's awesome. I'm so excited to see if you managed to successfully breed and grow these beetles from larvae. It's been so exciting watching the process. Keep up your awesome work. Well, thank you. I'm really excited about the progress of the project, and I hope that there's some pupae in there right now. There may well be. The larvae have been in there long enough that hopefully at least they got a few pupae. Do you have a Scolopendra gigantea? No. They're cool. Really expensive, though. But I think it would be cool someday. And Daniel Big D, I would love to see videos of your budgie named Twilly. I wonder when it will be out if you decide to. Well, I might do that. Most of my videos are about aquarium and vivarium pets, and I have had Twilly on as, you know, a guest on the live stream. He'll just be sitting on my shoulder. So, yeah, he'll show up again for sure. And Matt M, hello. Thank you for joining in, even if it's a little bit later. That is fine. Glad to see you here. Same for you, Gemma. Glad that you're here as well, even if it's a little late. Adam Musselman, nice to see you in the house as well. Heather Jensen says, he's ravenous, talking about a Pac-Man frog. I had a piece of orange peel in there yesterday, and he saw a springtail on it. Oh, this is the toad. Springtail on it, bit the whole orange peel like a crazy person. Yeah, I once had a toad that ate a piece of carrot when I dropped it. Not what I meant to do. I didn't intend to feed him a piece of carrot, but he ate just about everything. So on West End, where I live, there are lots of solid gray or black ones. And yes, Heather Jensen is probably right. It's probably Armadillidium vulgare. And I don't have an Archaspirostreptus gigas. The biggest millipede I've ever had is a Mardonius Parilis acuticonis, which is another large African species, but I don't currently have those. The biggest one I have now is a Spirostreptus species 1. And thank you, Wally. We've got 21 likes. Let's see if we can get those up. That would be great. Jordan Savala, where's a good place to find Scolopendra polymorpha? Well, in California is a great place to find them in general, but as far as specific environments where you can find them, I've had the most success near water, first of all, not like right up in the shore, but near water. So riverbanks, riverbanks is not the right word because it's not right on the bank, but right near the riverbank, let's put it that way. Right near the riverbank is a good place, or right near a reservoir, anything like that. Let me think. Where else have I found them? And it doesn't have to be near water, but that seems to help. Also, the season is important. It's April and May tend to be pretty good. Last year when I went flipping for Scolopendra polymorpha, I found tons of them. It had been kind of a wet spring, and it was in April. Was it early April? I think it was early April. I found tons of Scolopendra polymorpha everywhere. The year before that, when I went in May, same areas, I found far fewer of them. I did find some, but far fewer, and it was drier. So I think the moisture helps. If you go after rain or something, I think you're more likely to find them than if you go in a really dry spell. And basically, just flipping rocks. If there are little hills where there's a little bit of moisture in the soil, so we lift rocks, if there's a little moisture under the soil, you have a pretty good chance of finding them. It's not like they're under every rock, but my daughter and I went flipping for probably between half an hour and 45 minutes, and we found far more polymorpha than we knew what to do with. So a little elevation near a stream, like a drying wash in the desert where there's a little water in the bottom of it, and you look at the rocks along the sides, is a good place. But that moisture is key. There needs to be a little bit of moisture, because if it's really like bone dry under the rocks, they're going to be buried down deep and not be terribly easy to find. But I flipped a Scolopendra polymorpha way up in the mountains in California once. It was, I'm trying to remember how high it was, but the elevation was pretty considerable, and I still flipped one there. So California is an awesome place to find them. You got them pretty much all over the state. So Blue Basin Aquatics. Hello, welcome, Dr. Bright. What do you consider the best pet centipede? The only one I really had any experience with as a pet is Scolopendra polymorpha, and I know that they are widely recommended for several reasons. One is that they are inexpensive. They're impressively large, but they don't get huge. I mean, they're not anywhere near the size of a lot of the other ones that get a lot bigger. You're looking at a maximum size of around 6 inches, so it's not bad. They tend to be fairly easy to feed, fairly active, fairly undemanding. So they're also easily obtainable. And they can be captive bred, and some people do it. And they're not as widely captive bred as I would like to see someday, but they're a pretty good option, because I think the potential for them to be more widely captive bred does exist. Battle Mad Ronin, hello. And Mr. Ethan, do you have smoky oak millipedes? I have 2. I don't have smoky oaks, I have cherryfoots. That's the closest relative that I have to that species. And Chad Krotz, hello. And the Scolopendra polymorpha that I found when I was flipping them, this was in Washington County, Utah, which is the extreme southwestern corner of the state. They actually live almost all over the state, but you have to get out of the city mostly to find them. Even out of I'm in like a semi-suburban / rural-y sort of area, and I don't find them around here. But if I were to drive half an hour west of here, I probably would find some. I know people find them up here, up north, and further north than I am. So it's just, that's the easiest place I've found to find them. I have flipped them in other parts of the state too, but I love to go down there, and there's a lot down there, so that's usually where I go to find them. Omwa Sand. I have a huge forest in my backyard with a stream splitting, and I'm afraid of seeing snakes, but how should I look for safe to handle insects? Okay, well, there's a couple things you can think about. You can look up different ways of lighting insects. If you do a search for example, sheet night collecting insects, there are ways to hook up lights. You put a flashlight like behind a sheet, or just aim it at a wall at night, something like that. And a lot of insects will come to it, and then you don't have to go sticking your hands under things. That's a good way to do it. And another thing you can do is you can get a net for sweeping in grass, like tall grass, and you can get a lot of insects that way. All right, so Adam, oh, okay, how do you like the stream? That's a good question. How does he do that, guys? Because I'm always on this side of it, almost always, so I don't really know how to explain it. Can someone help him out there? And Wonderful Pet Chronicles. I'm hoping getting some morning geckos in my life soon. Awesome. They are really cool. And thank you, Heather, for handling that, for letting Adam know how to do that. Vince, hello. And Toilet Pete. A bit of an odd question, but in a wild caught bin and Porcella scaber, I've seen 2 orange ones. If I separate those 2, what do you think my chances are of them breeding? Well, you have a decent chance. If one of them is female, it's almost certainly mated with the other wild types. Excuse me. And if 2 of them are female, again, they're both have probably already mated. If they're both males, of course, there's that's a possibility, but chances are pretty good you have at least 1 female there. But males will, once they mate with the females are fertile for quite a long time. They'll have several broods of monkey without having to mate again. And so if you separate those 2 and let them grow a little bit, you might find that you're getting babies. And of course, the likelihood is that the babies are going to produce, because orange is a single gene recessive trait in isopods, is that you're going to get just normal wild type offspring the first time. But if you cross those grays with each other, then you'll get a percentage, approximately 25% of them, statistically speaking, will end up to be oranges, and you can start isolating those, and you'll get a group going. So yeah, you have a pretty good chance. Mr. Ethan, what's a good place to find Scolopendra polymorpha in Colorado? I have not collected them there, but the exact same thing that I mentioned before to Jordan, I think those techniques about where you go, like alongside stream beds and things in the flat rocks and the wood, even trash like pieces of boards and pieces of metal and stuff that are in the forest, you can look there, or in the desert or whatever in there. So that is it's a good place to look, I would say. And Matt M. And thank you. This is actually not my new mic. This is just my earbuds, and it's the onboard mic, or this onboard mic on the earbuds. I'm just using this to make do for now until I get the new mic, which is on its way. They shipped it to me. They said they shipped it or was in process or whatever several days ago. So it's on its way, but it's not there. And I'm hoping it gets there soon. But in the meantime, I'm glad this is sounding better, because that crackle, I'm sure, was really annoying. Sorry about that. And I couldn't hear it, because whenever I plug my mic in, it totally kills the sound from my end. I can't hear a thing. So there we go. Abby Green bought the culture 4 in the container of dwarf white isopods. Dwarf white isopods take a long time to breed. As long as the temperature is warm, they breed fast. So you should be fine. And since dwarf whites are all female, you'll have a good colony in no time, as long as you take good care of them and keep them fairly warm. If you can keep them around 80, 82, 84 degrees, somewhere in there, they'll breed fast. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. And Adam, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate that. The super chats really make a difference for me, everyone. So I really, really appreciate it, Adam. And thank you for the thumbs up as well. That's awesome. And it does. It really does, Wally. The like spikes really help people see the video more, which in turn, helps with everything else that makes Aquarimax tick, basically. Okay, so the substrate uses eco-earth and spagna moss with magnolia leaves for your isopods. And and Daniel the Big D, yes, actually I've been to the Salt Lake City Temple. It's pretty cool. So it's definitely a must-see for anybody who's coming to Salt Lake. If you're in Utah, it's a great place to go. Check out the Temple Square. Okay, and thank you, Adam. I really appreciate the super chat. And okay, and yes, Matt, this is the garter snake enclosure. The 3 garter snakes are hanging out in here. So Vince, that's not a bad substrate. I prefer to use a little bit of a richer substrate, but you will that'll probably work for you pretty well. I would say I like to use the organic compost and the rotting wood and so on better myself, but it can work. Magnolia leaves are great, and sphagnum moss is really important to help keep the humidity. So yeah, I would totally say it'll work for you. And you sell isopod substrate, and know anyone who does that is good. So Gemma, a couple that I've tried the Let me think of some substrates. I got to think about that for a minute. But I don't sell any currently. But there are some good ones out there. And Jordan, I see you put a super chat in. And thank you so much for being so helpful to Aquarimax. That really makes a difference. I don't know if I can tell you guys how much of a difference it makes. The super chats, support on Patreon, support through the Amazon affiliate links, or just buying Isopods from me, whatever. All of it really, really helps. I really appreciate it. And these super chats really make a difference. That's going to help me get a better microphone. This kind of thing. I would like to put a lot of it back into making the videos, directly making the videos of better quality. Things like lighting, things like sound, so that we can have better videos. Because I think that's one good way to show you that I really appreciate what you do when you do that. So thank you, Jordan. I have done a couple of, Gemma, I've done a couple of reviews of Substrate. One that I'm trying out now is Permian Exotics. They have a cool substrate that I'm just testing out, so I can't say a whole lot about it, but it looks good to me. And I've done others. If you look, do Aquarimax and Substrate, you can see there's some others there. Bugs in Cyberspace makes great substrates. I personally like to buy a lot of stuff from Bugs in Cyberspace, a lot of different supplies, and though I don't think I've ever bought Substrate from him, I trust Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace. He's never steered me wrong, and he has, I've sold him all kinds of things. He has sold me all kinds of things that I have been more than satisfied with. Totally happy with it. So I'm sure that the substrate that he produces is good stuff, even if I've never used it, just because everything else that he produces that I have purchased has been great. So, yep, I would go with Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace as a very good option. Abby Green, put them in your gecko enclosure already. Probably a mistake. Probably should have let them populate first, so it should be warm enough. Well, depending on what kind of gecko you have in there, if it's a gecko that might eat them, that might not be great. But if it's a gecko that's not likely to be interested in eating them, you're probably fine. And I wouldn't worry about it too much. And they'll probably show up eventually. Oh, cool. Is that where you live, Daniel, the Big D in Orlando, Florida? That's cool. They always put awesome flowers around them, that's true. Feast on a Pigeon, hello. Monteblanc, how are the ivory millipedes? They're my favorite. They're doing well. I just put some new leaf litter in there today or yesterday, recently, and some more calcium powder, and there are various ages in there. I'm expecting to see some new little babies soon. And Gemma, I have heard of short-tailed possums, and I've been intrigued by them for a long time. If I were going to get another mammalian pet soon, that might be one that I would pick. Seems like they have a lot of benefits of rats, but you can keep them individually, which, it doesn't really work as well with rats to do. They tend to like some rat company. But short-tailed possums don't want or need the company, so it sounds like a pretty good plan. And then they also live longer than rats, and one of the downfalls of rats is that they have a short lifespan, so that seems like a good way to go. So Jordan's trying out the Permian Exotics for his duckies. Oh yeah, you were telling me about that. That's awesome. All right, and Adam saying that Peter's great. I've used his substrate. My A. maculatum did great on it. I've since switched to make my own based on a recipe Russ shared, and everyone is thriving. Awesome. So sounds like that is a good way to go, like we were saying. Ken Malinsky, I have a hard time finding good sphagnum moss. Anyone have recommendations for suppliers? I found a good one on Amazon, and I can't see the label now, and I can't really get up because of the way my microphone's working. But if you email me, Ken, about it, I will tell you the one that I've been using. I'll read the label there, and I'll tell you what I've been using, and I've had great experience with it so far, and it's pretty cheap. Well, it's not as cheap as going and buying a huge bale of it at the garden store, but you don't have to worry about fertilizers or anything like that either. So Vince, I have been having a little bit of mold problems in my isopod enclosures and have 6 holes drilled in with mesh super glued on. Should I change the substrate and drill more holes? Which species of isopod do you have, Vince? Because the amount of ventilation depends heavily on the species. Okay, and Daniel Big D. I live near Panama City in the Panhandle and played with the ivory millipedes there. Ah, cool. That's awesome. Mr. Efin, how big do Scolopendra polymorpha get? Right around 6 inches. Some of them, not all of them get that big. Some of them are top out about 4 inches, depending on the population and so on. Also, some of them can get a little bit bigger from certain populations, but between 4 and 6 inches is pretty normal for Scolopendra polymorpha. And you're welcome, Ken. I'll totally be happy to do that. And Vince says, powder orange and powder blues. Okay, I would say, how big are those holes? Because I really like more ventilation for powder orange and powder blues, more like armadillidium, where you put some like 2 1-inch holes in a 6-quart tub at the top, and then maybe some side holes as well, or even 2 2-inch holes, and then some side ventilation as well, and cover it, of course, with the mesh. It's hard to overdo it, in my opinion, with ventilation for the powders, as long as you make sure that they always have a damp area. You never want them to dry out, of course. And Nicolas Galindo, I do remember talking to you before. I don't remember which live stream it was, but I'm pretty sure we talked on a live stream before. I'm trying to remember where you're from. Are you from Brazil? Am I right? I could be totally wrong, but I'm trying to remember. So, yes, Supreme Gecko, I think you're right. I think that is the kind I use. Okay, sorry, Nicholas. I get confused about who's from where. But I do remember talking to you. I remember your name. So, sorry I got the wrong country. All right. Yeah, there's a lot of people that I end up contacting from around the world, so, which I think is awesome. It's very cool that we got people from all different countries watching the live streams and stuff. And, all right. Adam Ludwig in the house too. Hello. 1/2-inch holes, and I have 6 drilled on top. That's actually not that bad, but you might want to add some cross ventilation. And the cross ventilation is key for helping to reduce mold. That makes a difference. And Nicholas, you have, oh, your message disappeared. Weird. Okay. So Ken, if you're not able to find it, just still send me an email. I'll totally figure that out for you, the type that I'm using. It is a little bit scary getting sphagnum moss online because you wonder what sort of contaminants might be in it and stuff. So I took a little bit of a gamble. I think though I got a recommendation though. Is it possible? I remember, Wally, you gave me a good recommendation for sphagnum moss, but you said it was hard to find, and I'm not sure I was able to find that type. And Vince, if you feel like there's a lot of mold, and it's kind of out of control, you can change out the substrate. That wouldn't be a bad idea. And Nicholas, good. Glad that your isopods are working out according to the tutorial. That's very cool. Oh, and you did find the 3D model for insect feeders. Cool. Yeah, I would love it. That's awesome. If you send me a couple, I'd be full of gratitude and in your debt. That's awesome. And permits. Well, Heather, this is where I am on permits. I can ship isopods to 49 states as well as the District of Columbia. And I have a particular list that I can ship, and that's the list that's on my webpage at this point. So there's some species I can't ship, like I can't ship Cabaris at all to any of those states. I can't ship Armadillidium gestroy, for example, or Porcellio hoffmannsegii or Magnificus, not on the list I can ship. But there's a lot that I can ship, a lot of the really popular ones I can ship. And there are a few states I can't ship some of those to. For example, Louisiana, Oregon, and Florida, I think, are the only ones that have restrictions higher than the general restrictions. So I like Porcellio laevis, I don't think I can ship to any of those states, for example. But all the other states, Hawaii is the only one that I can't ship to at all. Hawaii just flat out denied the permit, which I fully expected, but I applied anyway because you never know. So all the other states will allow me to ship to them, but with some restrictions, like I was mentioning. And then I've got permits to keep a number of millipedes, not to ship any at this point, and I don't have any other permits. I do have one in process right now for a particular beetle, and we'll see whether or not that pans out. But those are the only ones I have at this point. I need to start getting my springtail permits going now. Rochan, welcome. And Adam says, I have Terra Sahara substrate in a 40-gallon bearded dragon enclosure with powder blues. Put them in about 2 months ago. Haven't seen any since. Shouldn't they be coming to the top on occasion? I would expect to see them, but they may be reacting to predation. It seems like powder blues would be big enough to maybe interest bearded dragons, depending on the size of the bearded dragon. An adult bearded dragon might not care. Younger one probably would. So let's see. I would kind of expect to see some occasionally, but if you lift up the substrate, if you lift up like hides off the substrate and you don't see any, I would be a little concerned that they're not actually there anymore. But I would, dig around just a little bit to try to figure out whether they're there or not first. And Adam, yeah, I think Virginia was one of the later states that I got approved, but fortunately I did get approved. So Jorge says, I love watching you and Supreme Gecko's YouTube videos. Thank you both for all the advice and content. First time on a live stream here. Excited and happy to be here. Hope you're all having a great day. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And Mr. E. Finn, me too. I think centipedes are really cool. One of the coolest predators there are. And Nicholas Galindo, just to let you know, I also tried to put isopods with beetles, and they got along like immediately, so maybe you should try another live video. You know what, just that reminds me, I made some superworm beetles in kind of a fun way. I know other people have done this too, but I have had superworms around, and so what I did is with the superworms, I put a few into my leopard gecko enclosure. I was feeding our leopard gecko some superworms, and decided to just put some in the bioactive substrate, see if they would turn into beetles, because superworms will only turn into beetles if they can pupate alone, basically. But you can simulate that by just putting them in an enclosure with bioactive substrate. They'll dig down and find their own little spot and do it. So just a few days ago, I opened it up and looked and saw that they had pupated successfully, and now I've got some superworm beetles in there, which is pretty cool because they make good cleanup crew members. And if I want to end up breeding my own superworms, I can use those beetles to produce some eggs. And permits to ship isopods. Basically, APHIS, the Agriculture and Plant Health Inspection Station of the United States, regulates isopods because some of them are considered plant pests. Well, isopods in general are considered plant pests, even though that's not necessarily true of all species, but that's how they do it. And so they regulate the interstate movement of isopods in the country. And thank you for getting the like button going, Wally. And Gemma, looking for some plants to put in the vivarium. Any suggestions? Well, one that I love is a Chinese evergreen. If you want to start out, that's an easy one. And I'm loving the Korean rock fern. Heather sent me some, and I got some from the Bio Dude, and I love Korean rock fern. It seems like a really easy plant. And those are a couple that I would suggest. And Vince, oh, thank you. So Vince, I appreciate the super chat. Thank you for your help. Last question is, can I use egg cartons for your isopods? If not, where do you get your cork bark from? Some people do use egg cartons. I don't think that would be a problem if you want to use egg cartons for your isopods. I have used cardboard of various types for my isopods as well in the past. I don't really use it anymore, but I have in the past, and that's fine. I tend to get my cork bark from NE Herpeticulture, which is neherpeticulture.com. And I also get it from the BioDude, thebiodude.com. And so, yeah, I think you have some options there about what you can use. But like I said, a lot of people use the egg cartons, and they seem to be fine. And Adam Ludwig, have a second culture that is thriving. Should I maybe consider adding some more? Could you have a secondary culture that's thriving? Oh, you could. Yeah, it's not a problem. And I think Wally is great about teaching about his creatures, whether newbies or experienced keepers. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Elaine. I think Wally has some great information on his YouTube channel. And Mr. Efin, if I ever get hold of a Vietnamese centipede, I totally will, but I don't know if I ever will get one. But if I ever do, I'll make a video about it for sure. Thank you. And let's see. Oh, okay, cool. They're all pupating, Nicholas. That's awesome. Mink Fish Keeper, hello. And I wish I could stay that long. I actually have to make another video this evening, but I am making sure I'm doing a little bit of an extended live stream, which is awesome. Oh, Nicholas, you made a video of your chameleon and mealworms. Awesome. Is he eating it? So Daniel, we're probably not going to get another budgie because generally when you raise them with people by themselves, they get really attached to the people, and our budgie is attached to the people in the family. But they tend to lose some of that attachment if you get another bird. At least that's popularly stated, and I've seen it happen. I don't think it always happens, but it can happen. And it's my daughter's special pet, although he's friends with everybody in the family. So she didn't want to have two budgies because she wanted him to be, connected to people. They're also less likely to learn to talk, is what I've heard, if you keep them with another bird. And this one, of course, does already talk. And I've heard that birds learn to talk from other birds, too. So there's that. And Mink Fish Keeper, have you ever owned ants? Yes, I had a colony of ants years and years ago that I got probably more than 20 years ago, and kept it for about 3 years. And it was pretty cool. I liked it. I haven't had one since, but it was neat. And nature indoors. Do you need any permits to buy or to own certain isopods? Well, my understanding of the process, and I'm not, don't take this as legal advice because I don't understand everything about how it all works. But within a state, if you buy isopods from within your own state, you do not need a permit of any kind unless your state requires it. But as far as APHIS is concerned, you don't need a permit but your state may or may not require it. Now, if you're getting isopods from out of state from someone who has a permit to sell them, I don't think you need one. But if you want to get isopods into the state from someone who doesn't have one, I think you need one, which is a little confusing, I'll admit. I'm still a little confused about it myself. But for example, someone who buys isopods from me and I send them the permit number under which I send them the isopods, I don't think that person needs a permit. But if, you see what I'm saying? And if someone, you have a permit to distribute isopods and you distribute them under that permit, then the people who get them don't need a permit, but they would need a permit to send those isopods to another state, I guess, is how it works. Hopefully that makes sense. And Mr. Efin, what state are you in, or area are you in? And Daniel the Big D, I think it would be great if you bought a tarantula or a colony of harmless ants. Colony of harmless ants I may do. Tarantula I can't do because my wife has asked me not to do tarantulas of any kind. No tarantulas, no roaches, and nothing of medically significant venom. So that's the agreement, and that works for me. And Adam, love the content. Use your advice to set up my springtails and isopods. They are thriving. They love the burger in dry form. Awesome. And in the interest of not leaving the live stream, what was your ratio for mosquito bits to water for fungus net control? I usually put about 7 to 10 granules of the mosquito bits in about half a cup of water. I believe that's what I usually use. So it's not extremely scientific measurement, but I don't think it needs to be extraordinarily precise. You could probably fiddle with that ratio a little bit. But yeah, about 7 to 10 granules and a half a cup of dechlorinated water. Wow, Nicholas, you have black crazy ants. I've heard of that species. I've never kept them, though. I probably ought to do it at some point. I can stay a couple minutes longer. But then I've got to make sure I have enough time to make a video. we've got some fun stuff coming. Things that some surprise stuff. Of course, there's always some of that coming down the pike. Does a slice of lemon and some vinegar control fungus gnats? I have never tried that, although I have seen them fall into vinegar solution with a little bit of soap. You put like some vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and a little bit of water, and just a tiny bit of like dish detergent in there, and they do fall in that and get stuck. I have found that it doesn't work as well as some of the other traps. I prefer the sticky traps in my experience, but I think it'll work. So, Mr. Efin, if you try the deserty areas along the stream beds, have you tried that? That seems to be the biggest place I find them. Blue Basin Aquatics got lots of isopods in your basement. See, we don't usually get them in our basement. Too dry here most of the time. But so Adam, you're doing vent fabric, going up the little SOBs right now. So screen printing fabric is killer for vent covers. Oh, screen printing fabric. That's a good tip. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Well, it's worth a try, Daniel. If you just, what I would do is put maybe 3/4 apple cider vinegar and 1/4 water with just a teeny drop of dishwasher detergent in it, and put that out and see what you get. It will probably kill some of the fungus gnats. Not as good as some of the sticky traps or things like that, but it could probably help. And nature indoors. How do you get all the isopods out of the substrate if you're taking part of a vivarium? It seems like that would be pretty difficult. It is. It is nearly impossible to guarantee that you remove all of them. That's just, I've come to grips with that. That is a fact. It is. I'm not saying it's 100% impossible, but it is extraordinarily difficult to make sure you've gotten every single one. The best thing to do, in my experience, take all that substrate, put it in a separate container, and feed and water just one little part of the container, like near a piece of cork bark or something like that you set on the substrate. Feed and water near there and nowhere else. And slowly over time, you can find isopods collecting there and you can pull them out. After that, not much else you can do. It's really frustrating, honestly. It's probably one of the frustrating things about owning isopods is whenever you're changing out the substrate, it's really hard to guarantee. Now, as part of the conditions of my permit, when I am replacing exhausted substrate, I make a great effort to get out all the isopods, and then I have to freeze the substrate for 3 days to make sure that they're not escaping or anything. And thank you, Jordan, for joining. Really appreciate the super chat, and thank you for sticking around for the extra long live stream, and see you next week. Adam Ludwig, will superworm beetles escape from a glass terrarium 18 inches high? Depends on the substrate and other things that are going on in there. I have mine in a 20-gallon high, which is, I believe, 12 inches high. And then with the substrate, it's less than that. It's probably about 8 inches high at the shallowest part. They have not escaped yet. Of course, I do have a lid on the vivarium, but they seem to be doing fine, and they don't seem to be able to climb glass. So let's see. So Nicholas, I'm not breeding at all. I've had them for 2 months and no babies. What do I do? Remind me, Nicholas, what species you have. Walnut. Let's see. Do you have carnivorous plants? Not currently. I have kept a couple of species, but I don't have any right now, but I hope to do it again. And Gemma, I can't remember the name, but where do you get the isopod enclosure? It was made for isopods and has the vents built into it. I want to get one because it looks very nice. That is the Isoviva enclosure. I think he's having some supply issues right now, what with COVID-19 and everything, but hopefully that'll be over at some point. But super cool enclosure, I love it. Heard someone thought they got all the isopods out of their substrate. The months later found young ones. They were Cubaris marina. Yes, that they have their ways of doing it. And certain species especially have the ways of just showing up in substrate later, like powder blues show up in the weirdest places, seriously. And what is behind me in the tank? There are 3 red-sided garter snakes, Thamnophis sertalis parietalis. 1 female and 2 males. They are juveniles now, but growing fast, and next year I think I'm going to have some babies. It's coming around next, about a year from now, maybe a little more than a year from now, I'll probably have some babies. let's see what happens, Daniel. I'll be interested to see what happens. And Cheyenne geckos, hello. Good idea, Heather. Nice like spike. All right. And mealworm beetles will also walk up the silicone. Okay, that's good to know. Why are rubber ducky isopods and other similar ones so expensive? I think part of it is the demand. They're just, because they have a unique appeal with their new appearance. They're kind of the new, fairly new thing. One is because they're not the easiest to breed, nor the fastest. And they're not extremely slow or extremely difficult, but they're not the fastest or the easiest either. And originally they were all imported. Now a lot of them are being captive bred, which is great. But when they were imported, there's all the costs associated with that process. And then the demand was so high as soon as they came out that, nobody's going to take the price down if the demand is still solid, and it is. And the demand has been pretty constant and sometimes even escalated. So I think that's why. I think there will be a time when they will go down in price. I remember when zebra pill bugs were about, what was it, like $5 each or something like that. And now, you can get them for much, much cheaper. So yeah, Nicholas, it's true. It's a lot easier if you can take pictures. You can send pictures to me. If you go to aquariumax.com and you go to the Contact Us page and send me an email, you won't be able to attach a picture to that email, but I can reply to it, and you can send a picture back to the reply. It's kind of a weird way that works, but that's how it works. By the way, everyone, if you go to my website and you want to buy isopods and you notice there's a problem with the website, there is a little bit of a problem with the website, but if you reload the page when it says that error comes up, it'll almost always work. So just remember that you can reload and it's fine. So Thoreau Pods, I think it is a good idea if you can use that exhausted substrate. If you split it amongst like a couple of cultures and then you replace the rest with good substrate, it's a good way to inoculate the culture with a good microorganism, the good microorganisms that you want. And then if you have babies in there, you're not losing them. So I think that I like to do that when I can. If I tried to split my isopods every time I did them, though, I would quickly run out of room. But if you have space to do it, that is a good way to do it. So Rochan, have you ever heard of issues using Porcellio scabra in a snake bioactive setup? I've heard they can bite small snakes. Well, I wouldn't be too surprised because they try to nibble on me when I stick my hand in their enclosure, at least when they're hungry. So I wouldn't be too surprised. A lot of people don't like to use Porcellio with reptiles for that reason. And I have had good success with Porcellio laevis in with cresties, and that might be partly because the cresties are arboreal and it's not as big of a deal. But I would be cautious with Porcellio, and I think Porcellionidae pruinosus are a better choice with snakes. I'm trying Armadillidium klugi Montenegro in this one, and it seems to be working so far, which is interesting. And thank you, Wally, for posting that. And Mickey M, nice to see you in the house. That's awesome. It's great to have you here. This shirt, somebody asked about the shirt. Where is it from? It's from Jabberwork on Etsy. If you go to the Jabberwork shop on Etsy, you can purchase these shirts. So, pretty cool. So, let's see. So that's for Fishy Boy. Okay. Well, Adam, I appreciate the offer, but I actually don't drink any alcohol at all. But I do appreciate the offer. That is generous of you, but I never touch the stuff. But I do the bugs, as you know, so we've got that in common. That's awesome. And let's see. Nature Indoors. A pack of about 5 rubber duckies is like $150. That's $30 each. Yes, that's a pretty common price. Pretty common price. And it's not unusual for some of the cubaras to be even more. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and we are approaching 70 minutes. I need to get that other video going, but I really appreciate everybody. And there you go, Adam. That works. And I really appreciate all the super chats. I really appreciate all the participation and everything. So that is just about where we are. So I hope to have a good video ready for you on Friday. Got some stuff coming in the mail soon, and we'll see how that goes, if I'm able to do an unboxing for next week or if it's going to be something else, not sure. But it's all coming. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it all. Stay safe, stay healthy.